Hey everybody, how's it going? I hope you're all having a lovely day. So today's video is going to be on something called overcomplicating the ask. I want to explain this concept and how I think it screws people over when they are presenting a sales pitch to somebody for any particular reason. And this is something that I used to be really bad at because I used to have low self-confidence when I was making a pitch, and I also had an issue with advocating for myself and being bad at advocating for myself. So I'm hoping that this video helps people who are either bad at advocating for themselves or bad at pitching their particular ideas. So this is something that happens a lot to me at my store since the YouTube channel started to become popular. And this is one of the reasons that when people show up, even if I'm literally standing right there, the person at the front will say, "Lewis is not here." And if somebody calls and they ask, "Well, who is this and what are you calling about?" and they won't say what it is about, their number just gets tossed in the garbage pail. And there are a lot of people who are going to think that this is specifically about them, but I assure you it's not. It's about the 2 to 3 times a day that this has been happening for the past 6 or 7 years. What overcomplicating the ask is when you're afraid of rejection. So instead of make your 20-second, your 10-second, your 45-second sales pitch, what you do is you find a way to make it really, really long-winded and complicated when it doesn't have to be, because you think that the longer you go on, the further away the rejection is. Or if you don't finish your sentence, if you don't finish explaining it, if the person says, "No, I'm not interested," you could say, "Well, no, I'm not done explaining it yet." And I think that the people who overcomplicate the ask don't realize that that's what they're actually doing, but that is what they're doing. And it can happen because you're nervous, but the problem is when you overcomplicate the ask, you make it so that the person who you're making your sales pitch to, now, even if you actually had a decent idea, has completely lost interest in you whatsoever because they feel like they're being screwed with. They feel like you're going out of your way to be vague and hide something, and that kind of triggers something in their head. What is this person trying to hide and why? So I'm going to give probably a really bad example because I haven't had lunch yet. I'm going to give just a really weird example. Let's say that, I don't know, let's just pretend that it's really, really difficult to redo bathrooms because coming up with the tiles and the grout and the size of the tiles is a really difficult thing to do, and it's really difficult to cut it properly. And because it's difficult to cut it properly, you can wind up overspending on material. So let's just say somebody shows up and says, "Here's the thing. A lot of people want to get their bathrooms renovated. There are over 5,000 contractors that would be interested in this tool that allows you to buy just the amount of bathroom grout and tiles that you need to do your job. This way the customer saves money, the contractor saves money, and I could sell this tool for $5,000, and there's 5,000 people that'd be willing to buy it immediately. Here's the interest. The problem is I'm broke and I don't have the money to manufacture the tool. Would you be open to helping me manufacture this tool? We go in 50-50, I deal with all the work, you do the investment so that I can get this done." Like something like that. Instead of making a pitch like that, where there's a reasonable chance of getting a yes or a no, what I find a lot of people will do is they'll do something like this. They'll spend 15 minutes trying to explain what grout is and what bathroom tiles are. And then they'll spend another 5 or 10 minutes ranting on and on about the difficulty of cutting it. And then they'll talk about how they have this laser etched tool that can add to the accuracy of cutting in a material. And then they'll start talking about the technology behind their laser etched tool. And after 15 or 20 minutes, somebody's eyes are just glazing over. And they'll say, "Okay, what is the practical use of this? What do you want? What are you trying to accomplish?" And rather than actually answer the question, they'll just continue to get more and more verbose, because I think that there is a subconscious belief that if they just continue to make it more and more and more complicated, you're less likely to be rejected. And I think this is similar to trying to ask somebody out on a date. Like, instead of just going up to somebody and saying, "It was really interesting talking to you today. What do you think about having dinner sometime?" and just handing them your number or something and waiting for the yes or the no, imagine if you went up to somebody and said, "Hey, I thought that what you had talked about here was particularly interesting and it was compatible with something that I had talked about a few days ago with somebody else for about an hour. Would you like to hear about it?" And then just going on for 10 minutes instead of actually asking the person out on a fucking date. And, it's not something we would do, but I see people do this all the time with sales pitches. And if they're doing that with me, they're probably doing it with other people as well. And I wanted to also just kind of give an example of a time the first time ever that I did not overcomplicate the ask, and I actually got what I wanted. This was 12 years ago. You've probably heard this story told in the live channel many times, which is I used to work at this recording studio with somebody who was a massive, massive cokehead. And he was so good at getting money out of people because he never complicated the ask. He got the guy at the deli on 30th Street and 8th Avenue to literally bring $15,000 in his smock in cash to the studio to just loan to the owner, who smelled horrible, who had a clear and evident cocaine problem, and who never paid anybody back ever. And there was this agreement sitting on a bass amp in a room, and my friend Jake and I, who actually kept the studio running, he dealt with all the management, I dealt with all the broken equipment. We made everything work perfectly, but we were very young. I was still a teenager at this point, and I was bad at advocating for myself, so we weren't getting paid shit. We weren't getting any respect, anything like that. We see, we're busting our ass trying to run an honest and humble business from the ground, building something for ourselves from the ground up, trying to create a name for ourselves based on actually treating people fairly and properly and doing what we say, saying what we do, not stealing from people. And we see this agreement on a bass amp for a $70,000 or $75,000 loan, and that we knew the owner was never going to be able to pay back. And we absolutely lost our effing minds. Like, we lost our shit. So what I wound up doing, one moment. Note to self, you should probably think twice about walking back and forth in a field holding a microphone to yourself in a state that has a functioning Second Amendment. But anyway, back to what I was talking about, is that we saw this contract and we absolutely lost our shit. And my friend Jake wound up just dealing with it in a healthy way, which is he went back to making music, and I dealt with it by going downstairs, buying a bottle of Southern Comfort and Southern Comfort or Jägermeister, I don't remember. It's been like 13 years at this point. Finishing it, and I just lost it. I went into the back, I went into that guy's room, I interrupted his meeting, and I said, "You gave this idiot $70,000? If you had given me 10% of that, I would have built an empire with it. Here is how much money each room in this place makes. Here's how much money it could make if it was run properly, and here's how much their expenses are. Even if it was run properly, which it isn't, he will never, ever, ever be able to pay this back. Here is how my business works. Here is how much I charge for a service that people need every single day. Here's how much it costs me to provide that service, and here's how much money I make even though I started with $200. If you had given me 10% of that, I would have built an empire with it and paid you back in less than 2 months." And then I was politely escorted out of the facility, which is what should happen when a screaming drunk person shows up in your office. But my pitch was very simple. It had all the numbers, all the thesis pretty much put out there in 45 seconds or less. And the next day, he comes up to me with an envelope with $7,000, and he goes, "Now do something with it." Because I said if you had done that, I would have done something with it. I was absolutely stunned. But the thing is, before that, I used to have these really, really, really long asks and these really, really long proposals. And at the end of the day, the reason that I was doing it, if I was being honest with myself, is I was afraid of getting a no. Because I was afraid of getting a no, I would make shit so overly complicated and think I have to go through every single detail, because what if I only give this detail? If I only give this tiny detail, then they may say no. But the reality is, if you make everything so super hyper overcomplicated, if you say, well, I need to set a special time to meet with you about this, or we can have a phone call for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, they're going to immediately lose interest. But above all, if it feels like you're hiding something, if it feels like, wait, why is he not getting to the point? When I ask what it is he wants, when I ask what it is he needs and why, or what the specific application of this is, why can't he tell me in a few sentences? It kind of makes people feel defensive. Like, what? Because I already know that you're here because you want something. But why is it that you're not willing to tell me what it is you want? Why is it that you're not, when I ask what is it, you're not, and essentially what it winds up doing to myself and other people is they literally immediately lose interest in whatever it is that you are looking for. So what I would suggest is, if you have any sort of idea and you are trying to pitch, whether it is a business partnership, whether it is a grant, whether it is a loan, whatever it is, try to figure out how to make your ask as uncomplicated as humanly possible, and be open to the fact that they are going to say no. You have no control over whether or not what somebody else thinks, what somebody else is going to do. You make your ask, and that's it. But if you start making it insanely overly complicated, there is a very good chance that they are going to say no, even if they would have liked your idea, because you're raising their spidey senses of why isn't he getting it out. And think about, are you doing this because you're nervous? Now, this is completely separate from something in this book Jim Camp has called Start With No, which I recommend everybody read pretty much once a week on this channel, where he talks about how you should not you should not present without asking what somebody's fear or pain point is. You should kind of start with, hey, is this an issue for you? Or is that an issue for you? Or how do you feel when X happens? And then once they confirm that this is actually a serious issue for you, then you go in and say, well, here's something that could fix it, rather than just present. That's separate from this. But do yourself a favor and don't overcomplicate the ask, because when you do, even if you have a good idea, it may wind up getting ignored. I'll see you later.